Hey everyone. Hi, I'm Abhishek. I'm one of the co-founders of AppSmith, and I have with me here Confidence, who's one of our developer advocates. Today we are going to be
Hello, everyone.
spending. Hey, Confidence. So
Yeah,
Confidence is
thank you.
joining us from Lagos, Nigeria. I'm dialing in from Bangalore, India. And today we just have one main topic to cover, and that's improvements to the way that you can write JavaScript in AppSmith. There are a couple of changes that we've made, and some of you might have already noticed it, while others you might not have noticed it. So we are going to just take some time today to discuss those changes and how they've improved the JavaScript experience. How are you feeling, Confidence?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm doing well. We have S in the chat. Hello, S. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, yes. So how excited are you to show the JavaScript editor and the new JavaScript files?
I'm very excited because it actually changes the way you write JavaScript across AppSmith. So it's really nice, really neat, and really excited.
That is really awesome. Do you remember the number of times you've been asked about how to improve the JavaScript writing experience?
A lot. In fact, I have lost count. So I have something right here that I'd quickly like to share. I can remember we had a community call in May of this year, and we're trying to figure out what features to prioritize. And we got some
Yeah,
really good feedback from members of the community. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick so that we see how requested this feature has been. So I'm trying
that
to
sounds
share my
great.
screen.
So while confidence brings that up, we've also made some very small but major uh, ease of life changes, which to the property pane. Oh, hey, confidence. Thanks for showing this. Oh, I remember this meeting. This we had about
Yeah.
50 people.
Yes. So we had a lot of people voting based on what features they like, and the ones that were really awesome that they needed right now, they were to vote using the fire icon. So you can see that we have the JS editor right here, and we had a lot of people putting the fire icon around it to show that it's really needed. And after this community call we had, we also got lots of requests on Discord. Folks were always asking about it because they know that as soon as it lands, it's going to change the way we write JavaScript across the entire AppSmith platform.
Yeah, and so many times, people try to like run some JavaScript on page load, or they want to use like async await, other JavaScript uh, functions which are not allowed in AppSmith because of the way that we evaluate AppSmith. That of course, we always have to tell people, you know what, just wait a little bit. We're going to go live with our bigger JS editor. So that's really cool. Now, one of the things that we also did while we are going to demo the big JS editor, one of the things that we also did was we actually improved our property pane. Let me just quickly share my screen. I'm going to show you what I mean right here. So we made a bunch of small changes to the property pane, which I hope you are all going to enjoy. They actually just went live today. So
Yes. I saw
yeah,
that today too.
exactly. So it just went live today, which means if you're on a cloud hosted edition, you of course got all of these changes immediately. But if you're on a self hosted edition, just wait a few more days. We are going to test this out a little bit more and expect to see this next week, maybe like Wednesday or Thursday. So you should also see this. But talking about the changes, number one is you can see like our property pane is now docked on the right hand side. So now you have everything right here. So I can easily switch between widgets, and I basically get, okay, let's just wait for that to load. All right. So I can basically keep switching widgets, and the properties are all right here. So this is really exciting because you're no longer looking at a floating property pane. As much as I like the floating property pane personally, I do know that this is definitely a much better way of doing it. The other thing that we've done is you can now resize the property pane. So if you're still writing code here, no worries because you can resize. So this is really cool.
Yes. Yes, I really love this because it also makes the experience of building apps better. So, like, you have a couple of widgets on the canvas, and each time you go change a widget, the position of the pane changes. So you have to keep track
Yeah.
of trying to move your mouse to the right place in order to edit the widget. But now, you just know it's on one side. So each time you need to go edit something, you bring your mouse over to the other end of the page, and you're able to edit it. So it makes it really easy to think about writing code and building apps.
Yeah, exactly. And confidence, if you remember, we've also had some issues where people were unable to select a particular widget. It's a rare corner case, so I don't think I have an example here, but that's again something that gets solved with this.
Yes,
So we have
yes,
this.
yes.
So this, I'm really happy that we made a change. We're actually working on making another change to this editor right here. That's gonna probably go live in 2 or 3 weeks, where this entire editor is gonna become full page. So you just don't have a small window here, but you can actually expand this to the entire length of the property pane. Again, it's a small fix, but we are excited to make this change because it's a much needed change.
Yeah,
The other change that we did here is we made a change to our Entity Explorer, a very small change, but you can now collapse this. Now, this is useful when you're on a small monitor, like I'm on a 13-inch Mac, and even though the resolution is good, I often struggle for space a little bit. So I like the fact that I can resize this, and I like that the Entity Explorer is hidden and it's available to me only when I need it. So I can just go to the left and then it's available for me. I can look up widgets, drag and drop something, and uh, it's gonna still work for me. So this is a small change that we've made. Of course, you can also dock this, and once you dock this again, you can expand it. This is especially useful if you have really long API names. You can now see everything very easily. So you can also make it smaller if you need it, but I think keeping it somewhere here probably works really well. So this is another small change that went live today.
yeah,
The other
and we're getting a lot of love for these new UI improvements we are having on the platform. So we know folks experienced some troubles with the previous design, so this is definitely going to make this better. We have HK saying here that the floating property pane was a pain, that the static one to the left is just beautiful. Yes, I totally agree with you. And we have lots of more love coming in. Yes, this is already live. So, Rochester, you can try this live right now on app.appsmith.com. So, just after the call, go test it out by visiting the AppSmith Cloud instance.
Yeah. And yeah, so you're right that a lot of people have already started liking it. I had a friend who messaged me on WhatsApp today saying that he's so happy that we've finally gone to the fixed sidebar. And yeah, I'm going to miss the floating sidebar, but I think I'm really happy that we decided to move away from it. It just shows that I think it proved to us that we are willing to make major changes if users are requesting for it, and we'll happily get rid of a bad UX to make it much better, even if it is something old and major. So I'm really happy about that. The last thing I want to show you before we go to the actual demo of the JS editor. The JS editor is, of course, here. I'm not clicking it because I'm going to let Confidence show that to you. But the last thing that I want to show you before I hand it off to Confidence is our preview mode. Now, if you look at the top, you have the comment, you have the editing mode, you have the comment mode, and then now you have the preview mode. The preview mode is really cool because now you can see exactly how AppSmith apps look like before you hit deploy. One of the problems that users complained about was the fact that they can't actually see and interact with an AppSmith app the way that the users would without hitting deploy. Now, often you don't want to hit deploy because maybe you have live users using an app and you don't want to break the app for them, or you're just testing something out. And that's why we've introduced the preview mode here. So you can just switch very easily between preview and edit mode, and you'll be able to use everything in AppSmith right here. Uh, this is again something that I'm hoping all of you like.
Yes, yes, yes. All right, so shall we go into the JS demo?
Yes, absolutely. That's the main event of the day. So let's
Yeah.
just go for it.
So not keeping you waiting anymore. I'm just going to show this right now. All right. So for the JS editor, this is live right now on app.appsnip.com. So you can go check this out right now and also give us feedback in order to improve this. But I'll be showing you a couple of things you can do in the JS editor. And just to have this in mind, you're not limited to doing only these things I'll be showing you, because it's actually a full-fledged JavaScript editor. You can do whatever you want in the editor. So I'm just going to be showing you some examples of how you can make use of this feature in your applications. So the first example I would be showing you here is how to use constants in your application. So for example, if you have an app that has been themed using variables, this makes it really easy. So I'm just going to show you what I have right now. I have a couple of text widgets, as you can see. These are all the text widgets I have. So I'm just going to show you how it is configured. All right, looking to the side, we have the property pane here. You can see that the value for the text name is actually coming from a JavaScript file. You see we have consts, which represent constants. Then we have a constant object, and then we have name. And same also goes for the background color, also coming from the constant object. We also have the text color, similarly coming from the constant object. And I can show you how this everything we have here is written by going to the constant object we have right here. So I'm just going to open this up. All right. So taking a look at this JS file we have right here, we have declared a bunch of constants that is used to style the entire experience of the app. So we have the name variable, which is displayed in the text. We also have the background color, we have the text color, and we also have the image that is shown in the two image widgets you saw at the side. So this is really powerful because you can tweak the entire experience of your application just by changing a couple of variables right here. And I'm going to show you this by changing everything inside the constant object here to something else. So right now we have an awesome text. We have a different background color and text color, and we have also changed the image here. So going back to the editor, you should see that everything has been automatically updated. So this is really useful if you have variables that are used across your apps. You can easily create a new JavaScript file, for example, create a new JavaScript file and store all of that data as variables in a JavaScript file and reference it throughout other parts of your application that you would need to make use of those values. So it makes a lot of difference when it comes to theming, because you can dynamically change the themes. You can build apps that are custom themed based on the currently logged in user. So I think this is going to make a big difference when it comes to theming and how you build your apps. All right, so the second feature which I really love is being able to transform data. So previously, if you had to transform data, you had to write a lot of JavaScript in the really small JS tab we have right here. So you might need to do something like writing the function right here, for example. And then right inside here, you go ahead to write whatever code you need in your application. This is really small, although it works, but it's really small and the experience is not that great because you have the formatting off. Lots of developers while building apps would love to be able to read their code in one glance, and that would be very difficult if you have a really small text box right here just to write JavaScript. Another issue with the small text box we previously had is that it was quite difficult to share code across pages. So in certain situations, you would have a couple of widgets that needed to use the same code. And what you had to do in that situation is to copy the code over and paste it in all the widgets that need it. And that causes a lot of problems because in code, there's this paradigm that you should not repeat yourself. So it's best to write once and use everywhere versus having code copied all over your application. So this has been fixed by the JavaScript editor, and I'm just going to show you how the new experience is. But before that, I'd like to show you an old experience. So let's go back to the Explorer here. And right here, I have a query to get users from the database. So this is a get users query, and you can see it's returning users data with the gender, the ID, the name, and a couple of other data about the users using this select query right here. So what I need to do in this query is that I want to use it to build a select drop down. And in order to do this, previously I had to write JavaScript in the Entity Explorer right here. So under the options section, I had to write some JavaScript, create a map function here that is going to return the label and value. And this works, but if I need to use a similar map function somewhere else, I'll need to rewrite everything or probably still copy the entire code over. But with the new JavaScript editor, I do not have to do all of this. So I'm just going to show you what I have here. I have a JavaScript file called utils right here. I'm just going to open it up. And here I have a select function. So the select function takes in some data and also a couple of fields. And given the fields that have been passed to this function, it does the mapping and returns the label and value that is required to build the select options for a select widget. So this is how I'm currently making use of this in the application. So here we have the new way of doing things. I am using the utils file and calling the select function. And what I'm doing right here is just sending the data coming in from the get users query and telling it to create a list of labels and values using the name and also the ID. And taking a look at the evaluation here, you can see that that is exactly what gets created and returned back to this widget. And the beauty of this is that I can reuse this code in different widgets while still maintaining the same logic and not repeating myself. So I have a movies select drop down here. And similarly, I'm doing the same thing. So I'm using the utils file, I'm using the select function, and I'm passing in an entirely different data here. I'm passing in the get movies data. It's a separate query we have, very similar to get users, but I'm creating a list of options using the title and the IMDb ID. And you can see that we have that being created here as well. As you can see in the evaluated pane, this is also returned. So it's really nice because it allows you to write clean code without having to repeat yourself. So this is a really nice feature of the JavaScript editor. So I'm just going to move on to the next thing that you can do using the JavaScript editor here. So you have conditional static values. So let me show you what is going on right here in the app. So whenever I select a movie from the app, I am going to fetch the poster for that movie, and we have that displayed here. But in some cases, you may want to make API calls using default values or values based on data from the currently logged in user. Previously, there was no way to do this because you just had to either only use values from the currently logged in user or have static values in the API call. But that has all changed with the JavaScript editor. So I have the constants file right here. And there's a function here that gets API keys that is used to make the request to fetch the posters you saw on the canvas. So the code I have right here does a check. So it checks, do we have a currently logged in user, for example? Because if we had a login flow, we would want to store the data of the currently logged in user somewhere. And a good place to store this is using the AppSmith store. So we have that stored in. If we have a stored in user, we would want to go ahead to use the key from the currently logged in user, else we can default to a static API key. And this code right here returns whatever is the result of the evaluation. And we can check this out. So right here, I have that function here, the get API key, and I can run it to see what the evaluation returns. And you can see, because I actually do not have a logged in user, we are returning the default value here. And we can use this default value as a fallback when making API calls. So if you take a look at
Confidence.
this,
I just wanna highlight the response section here. Uh, I was
okay,
speaking to a few users before, and they didn't realize that they can actually see the response right here. They were often switching between the JavaScript editor and the page on which they were building. So just wanted to highlight the response tab here because this is going to be like really useful when you have a lot of functions.
yes, yes, yes.
You don't need
And
to
I'll
switch.
show more of how you can use this as we take a look at the other files we have right here. So you can easily preview the evaluation coming from any function you have here by just running the response. And you can see we have the string from the default string here showing up. So we can go to make use of this function in an API call, because right now what we are doing is that we have a logic that conditionally checks for a key if a user is currently logged in, else it has a fallback. So we can go, for example, to make use of it like we are doing here in the get posters API. If you take a look at what we have here, we are passing along the API key, and this function just does the logic of handling, is there a logged in user? If there's a logged in user, let's make use of the key from that logged in user. Else, we can make use of the static value we have as a fallback. So this is one really nice thing that can be done using the JS editor here. All right. So moving on, you can also do some functional programming. So like I said earlier, this is full-blown JavaScript experience right within AppSmith. So it means you can have some fun with functions. And I have this simple app UI built to illustrate how you can do this. So this application has a form, as you can see right here, a form that has a name and also an email value. So for the name, for example, I can go write something like John, and the email is going to be something like john at do.com. And here, I can choose to select which API processes the request from this form. So I have two APIs. I'm just going to go back to show you the APIs I have. I have the Echo1 API here. We have the Echo1 API. Then I also have a second API called Echo2. And as the name says, the API just spits back whatever I sent to it. So I can choose which API handles or processes this request based on the selection made here on the form. So let's try this out with Echo1. I'm just going to click on the run button. And you can see that the response from API 1 is shown here. And similarly, we can also go into play with this using the second API, which is the Echo2 API. So I'm just going to run this. And you can see that we get the same response. Now, I know you're wondering how are we doing this. I'm going to show you how we have that done by going to the JavaScript file we have set up for this. So we have the functions file called fonts. And in the button for the form, what we are doing is that we are running the run echo function, and then we're passing along the data that has been collected from that form. So if the data API selected from that form is API 1, what we do is that we pass the run function to a secondary function we have, which is this runner function. And what the runner function does is that it takes an API and also some data to run. So we can pass the action for the Echo1 API and also pass the data along if the user has set that this data should be processed using API 1. And this code references this function right here, and that takes the API, runs it, and also passes the data along as parameters. And here we have some default conditions if this call is successful. So if this is successful, what we have right here is that we're showing a message that the API run was successful. Else, If this fails, we have a fallback to let the user know that this could not connect, that there was some error, and that this would display an alert to the user. So we are receiving data from the form and making a call to a second function to actually execute the API call. And this is something really cool that you can do with the JS editor. So yeah, this I think is really cool. Being able to do some functional programming here is something that I know would change the way JavaScript is written in AppSmith. And we are getting lots of love from the chat right here. Yes, I really love this feature also, HK.
Uh, Confidence. We should also add a few more snippets in AppSmith. So that's something I think that's going to be like super useful.
Yes, 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 definitely.
So that's a to do for the product and engineering team.
So I have this question here. What is the best way to debug? Is it with console log or is there another way? To show you how to do this, you can use the response tab that we talked about earlier. So I'm just going to go to the utils file, for example, and say, for example, I am trying to debug what goes on in the select function here. If I try to run that function here, I'm not going to get any response because this depends on a data variable and also a fields array. So I just would not get any response. So what you can do is that you can pass default parameters to the function here. So for example, I can do something like get movies dot, or let's say get users dot data. And for the fields, I can pass a default parameter. The goal here is to debug or try to build out this function. So I can just pass a default parameter for the username. So let's say name and also the ID, which is ID. All right. So now I can go ahead to test this function out because I have default parameters passed in. I do not need to write console logs everywhere. So I can just test this by clicking on the run button from the response tab. And you can see that we are able to view the transformation that has happened in the select function. So yeah, this is one way you can do this. You don't have to write console logs everywhere across your application.
So I don't think we have any more questions right now. Awesome. So
Yes, thank
confidence,
you,
do you have?
yes.
I have a question for you. Do you have ideas for more complicated applications that we can build that wasn't possible before?
So something I know that is coming soon in the future is the ability to use promises within the JS objects we have right here. So that's something that is still in the works. And when it comes out, it's totally going to change whatever you're able to do in the platform. Because what we have right here, I'm just going to go back to what we have in the functions file. So for the functions file we have right here, we have a runner function that actually makes an API call. So when that gets released, you can do something like writing async await. So you can do something
Yeah.
like um, async and come and do something like an await and store this in a variable, say const data or value. Let's say response. Put this in a variable and return this right here in the function. Yeah,
Nice.
so this is something that you'll be able to do really soon, and it's just going to change the way you write apps on AppSmith. So please keep your eye out for future improvements to the JavaScript editor.
Yeah. Async await, I think they're gonna go live end of this month.
Oh,
So
that's really soon. That's really
yeah,
soon.
uh, maybe I'm gonna be in a bit of trouble for saying this, but I know that Ritu and Apeksha, they've been working on this. We have two more questions. One question is by Arvind. Is there any plan to enable events between two applications? So
Do you want to take this, Abhishek?
I think if I understand this correctly, this is to like I trigger something on one application and then the other application then uh, I guess like reacts to that event. Would that be? Am I understanding this correctly?
Not sure, but what I was thinking the question is about is probably being able to share actions across pages. Because right now, if I go to create a new page, so I go to create a new page, for example, the new page I have doesn't have access to my queries and APIs. It also doesn't have access to the JavaScript objects that I have from the previous page. So I'm thinking the question is probably more focused on having an app level action or an app level JavaScript object that can be shared across pages on the platform.
So if that's the question, then that's something that's not live today, but it's something we've already started designing and planning for in engineering. We expect to go live with this first quarter of next year, basically by sometime in April of next year. This is a major change that we are bringing about. So far, as most of you know, every query that you write in AppSmith is linked to that particular page, and you cannot reference widgets of one page in a different page. You cannot do that, and similarly, you cannot have shared JS files either. But that's something we are working on. So soon you'll be able to introduce global objects, global files. You can still have local files which are page specific, but by default, you'll have like global actions. So that's something that we are working on. And for our users, I'm just going to share the issue uh, in the YouTube chat so that it's easy for people to track it. But this is something that we are very excited about, and uh, we've been waiting to work on this. It was quite a complicated task, but we finally started working on this, uh, and we have a few updates here. So I'm just going to share that on the on our YouTube comments. Okay, here you go, Arvind. So expect to see this not too soon, but within a quarter. And just track this issue because we'll keep posting designs and all our thoughts right here. You can already go through the issue here because we've already discussed quite a few ideas of how to achieve it. One of the biggest challenges with building this feature is building this in a way that doesn't break old applications. That's something which is obviously non-negotiable, and that's one of the reasons why it's actually going to be a slightly longer process for us to go live with this.
Yeah, so we're trying to be careful not to nuke the existing apps. So definitely
Yeah,
take our time working this out.
yeah, exactly. We have to just get this right. So. And then there's another question from S, which is, I guess, a follow up to the same question. JS objects, are they accessible everywhere from any pages? Now, S, this is again something that's a constraint in AppSmith today. The JS object is specific to that page. It's not an application level JS object. This again we'll be addressing in that same issue that I just shared here.
Yes. Yes.
So before we end the call, I just want to thank some of our community members, uh, Green Flux, then ZZZHV, GHV, then Tom from WazirX, a bunch of these users who've been really patient with us while we worked out all the flaws in the JS editor, and they've also been the first people who've given us feedback. So I really thank all of you who've been on our Discord. I'm sure I'm missing a few names, But these names I remember because they instantly gave us feedback that made the JS editor much better. Uh, and because of this early feedback, that's the reason why I believe this editor came out without much bugs at all. I actually don't think we ran into any critical bug within the first 2 weeks of going live with this. And that's because of the early feedback that we got on our deploy previews. So I'm really grateful for everybody who participated in that testing phase.
Yes, yes. And we have one more question from S. So the question is about using JS objects through Visual Studio Code. So the last time we had a conversation around this, I can remember that Apit said he was going to research more on probably building an integration or an extension for Visual Studio Code that connects to your AppSmith application. So I think this is still in the early design stages, and I'll definitely let you know progress that have been made on this front.
Yeah. The fastest way by which you'll be able to do this is as soon as we have our Git sync live and available for all users. After that, you'll be able to write JavaScript uh, in any editor of your preference. VS Code, of course, has a really good integration with GitHub, so you'll be able to write all your code there and then sync it to the AppSmith app. So I'm really excited about that. That is again a major feature that's going to come out. That's actually it's live for a few users, but there are quite a few polish and bugs that we are fixing. And this is something that we expect to go live end of this month or early next year. We were really hoping to go live with Git sync in the month of November, but it's been pushed forward a little bit. So when it comes out, it's going to work really well. So that should hopefully solve your problem. And yes, you're right. The export button will apply for JS objects as well. This is the one place where there could be a couple of bugs, but it should work for most cases. The export, like being
Yeah,
able
it
to export
does.
the
Yes,
application.
yes, it does. I have personally tried this out because I was curious how it's going to work. So I tried exporting a couple of applications and
Right.
importing them back, and all of the objects I have written or all of the files I have created for JavaScript got exported and imported back as well. Yeah, so this works.
Awesome. That's really good news then, because I believe we had a small bug when it came to importing applications into the older editions of AppSmith. I believe that's where we had a bug. Maybe that's fixed. I need to really check that. But it's really good that it's you've tested it and it's it worked for most cases.
Yeah.
So uh, we we have to try Buddy Base more seriously. We had tried it a few months ago. I think they do a great job with their product. We personally, of course, prefer AppSmith, uh, but I think there are lots of things that we can learn from Buddy Base, especially around mobile responsiveness. That's been a weakness of AppSmith, which we will be fixing soon. But as of today, I know Buddy has that edge. Uh, we would actually love to know what is it that you guys think about AppSmith and the other comparable products. That would be really interesting for us to know. And if there's anything that you feel we are doing worse or we are doing better, we would just love to hear about it so that we can go on and improve this. Honestly, like we are just so excited that internal apps and admin panels are going to get much better. It doesn't matter who's making it better as long as it's getting better. Because I've gone through my share of badly built and ugly internal apps. And I'm so glad that those days are almost certainly behind us. Thanks to AppSmith, BuddyBase.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem like we have more questions.
Yeah, I think we've answered all of the questions. Then I think we can end it here. Oh, so S has another comment. He's missing a gallery view like Airtable. Uh, this is something that we might be able to address as soon as we have the grid version of our list widget. Today, the list widget is only vertical, but it will become a grid widget sometime next quarter. I know we are not working on it right now, but it's something that we intend to pick up. And I'm hoping that makes it easy to create a gallery view. I personally need to try out Airtable's gallery view a little bit more, but I do know it's really useful because everything just looks very pretty and it's much easier to read. So I'm hoping our grid widget actually solves that problem. So we can end it. Actually, Confidence, I have a really interesting application that has been built by one of our team members. I'm just going to take a few seconds, maybe like 30 seconds to show that because
Okay.
I have no idea how it was built. I just literally found it before the call. But I'm so excited by this application that I'm going to go ahead and share this
Okay.
and
Okay.
then
I'll
we'll
love to
end
see
it.
it too.
Cool. Okay. So this is an interesting application that's been built by Ajinkya, who's one of our engineering managers, who also worked on the JS editor. And Ajinkya used to teach programming to college students when he used to work in the US. He used to work for NASA, and he used to teach kids programming. So one of the interesting things that he's built is a way to learn programming in Logo using AppSmith. And this is really cool because uh, you can essentially like write very simple uh,
What?
logo programs in
This
AppSmith.
is really cool.
Yeah, it is, right?
Wow.
It is so insane that
Wow.
that
And
works.
and I love the visual
Wow.
feedback you get right away from writing some codes to the side. I really love that.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. It is pretty epic.
This looks
And
really
you
cool.
also have the sorry, go on, Confidence.
Yeah, I was just saying this is really cool. I would need to check this out right after this call. Is it public?
So this is not a public app yet. I don't have the edit access yet, but I do know this has been possible because of the JS editor.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes, definitely.
and
Yes.
this is a really cool. What's the word? Example of how versatile AppSmith is. The fact that you're able to build like a like an IDE along with an interpreter. That's kind of insane that you're able to do
Yeah, yeah,
this.
yeah. That is because this is definitely an interpreter that runs on top of the JavaScript editor.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and this is only possible because of the JavaScript editor, right? Would not have been possible before.
Yes.
So I
Yes,
know
definitely.
that's why Ajinkya was really excited about building this. I'm also going to just leave this for other people to check out in our YouTube comments. And this we'll actually turn this into a forkable application so that you can use this. I'm going to ping Ajinkya and ask him to turn this into a publicly forkable application. But for now, you can try this out, and uh, hopefully, this inspires you to do more with AppSmith. So with that, I think we can end this. Uh, this is the last month of the year, and we've been doing these calls since February. So we've finished like 11 months doing this, and I'm excited to do a few more calls this month. We have a lot of new updates that are coming out, so we're going to talk about it next week. And then we're also making new changes to our Entity Explorer, for which we'll actually show some designs as well over the next couple of weeks. And I'm excited to talk about that. And with that, thank you so much for joining us. All of you have a great day, evening, night, wherever you might be. And thank you, Confidence, for showing this to us today.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye bye, everyone.